There were many colorful clouds in the sky, and the source of life was already moving towards the horizon. Soon it would disappear behind the blue sea. So it was already late afternoon. When Cheyenne, Sasha, and Adocaz arrived at the inn, Glaczio seemed to be waiting for them, leaning against the wall and watching a butterfly flutter past him. When he saw the three approaching, he pushed himself away from the wall and crossed his arms. The wind played with his long ice-blue hair as he winked at Cheyenne. She sighed, and Sasha rolled her eyes before opening her mouth to tell him he was wrong. "Hey, Icicle! Cheyenne accepted my suggestion. What do you say now, huh?" The healer grinned and didn't let the young woman rattle him. He calmly gave her an answer. "Very good. Then my little angel has made a wise decision for a change. By the way, I also have a suggestion for you, doll. How about a little combat training? You really need to learn to fight back and defend yourself. The last few times you got away with it, almost unscathed, but it won't always end so well. There's a large garden area behind the inn. We'll go there now, and I'll teach you a few things, sweetheart." He turned away and walked behind the large house. Sasha seemed to like his suggestions for a change, and followed him. Cheyenne timidly trailed behind, while Adocaz happily rushed behind the inn. Was he serious? He wants to teach me something? He wants to train with me? That probably means he'll fight with me too. I don't stand a chance against Glaczio. When I think back what he did to the knights. But it's true, in a way. I have to learn to defend myself at least. Then I wouldn't be so dependent on help, and others wouldn't have to put their lives in danger for me. All right, close your eyes and go for it. When she arrived in the garden, she saw Sasha sitting on a stone bench with Adocaz lying next to her on the grass. Glaczio was standing in the middle of the lawn, waiting. The garden was full of fruit trees and colorful flowers, and through a gate made of roses a few steps led to a terrace from which a path led to the beach. It was a beautiful place. The healer approached Cheyenne and thought for a moment before speaking to her. "All right, little angel. You have a foldable bow as far as I can see, but do you have any other proper weapons?" The girl shook her head, because the only thing she had besides the bow was the small knife, but that wasn't much use in a fight. Glaczio seemed to see it the same way, because he looked at it skeptically and didn't pursue the matter further. Then he continued, "Well, until you have a sword, you'll have to make do with your bow. I assume you know how to use it and your arrows hit the target?" Cheyenne nodded again, and the healer continued. "Wonderful. By the way, I had already stopped by the blacksmith's earlier to ask about your sword, but unfortunately the shop was closed. Now then, unfold your bow. You don't need any arrows right now. But as I see it, you don't have any with you anyway." He walked back to the middle of the garden and motioned for the girl to face him. She did so, unfolding the black metal bow. She pressed a button on the side, and the weapon maximized its size within half a second. Glaczio examined the unusually large bow, and Cheyenne proudly told him about her weapon. "Impressive, isn't it? I've had it for as long as I can remember, but my grandparents didn't give it to me until my 10th birthday, because they thought it was such a dangerous weapon. When I finally got it, I practiced aiming with it every day, and now I'm really good at it. By the way, it doesn't need arrows, Glaczio. They just appear when I concentrate and imagine one. And now that I know that black mist or black fire is Umbraura, I would say they are Umbraura arrows. But Umbraura can't actually take physical form, can it? Then it must be magic, right?" To convince the others, Cheyenne made a black arrow appear and then disappear again. The healer continued to look thoughtfully at the bow and exchanged a glance with Sasha before answering the girl. "Little angel, so you've had this bow for as long as you can remember, yes? Very strange. Ah, no, you want to know what I think, don't you? Well, that was definitely Umbraura, no mistake about it. But it wasn't elemental magic. It was Umbraura in its purest and clearest form. The thing is, for a normal human being, it is simply impossible to control pure Umbraura, or non-physical luminium, to such a degree." The few people that can do so are only able to do so using highly sophisticated equipment from research laboratories. But this research is still in its infancy and only began a few years ago. It's not really progressing either because the Knights close most laboratories when they find out that experiments are being conducted with Umbraura. I've never seen a bow like this before either. I would almost guess that it was created at the same basis as an elemental sword, except that this bow does not have a specific element. Unless it carries the darkness within it. This is pure Umbraura in a minimally transformed form and produces black magic, which is much more powerful than all the other elemental spells. But that's impossible. No one in this world can still produce the element of darkness and thus cannot make such a weapon with it. People no longer know how to bring one of the special Umbraura spheres, which take on elements, into contact with darkness. But even if one were to miraculously manage this, no normal person could handle it. Little angel, you have an enormously extraordinary weapon and a special gift for controlling Umbraura. You are one of those people who have a great deal of life force in their bodies. That also means that you should be able to wield elemental magic. But first, I will finally teach you how to fight. Take your bow like a sword and attack me. Glaczio tilted his head and waited. While he was speaking, the healer and Sasha exchanged meaningful glances from time to time. Once again, they seemed to be hiding something from the girl. My bow is supposed to be special? First he says that no normal person could master Umbraura, then he changes his mind and wants to tell me that I'm special because of it? So now he thinks I'm not normal or what? And I'm supposed to be able to master black magic? Pure Umbraura in the form of a darkness element? But then he said that was impossible. Cheyenne's thoughts were interrupted when Glaczio challenged her to attack again. Hey, Angel, come on, attack me. I know it's hard to fight someone who is pretty and strong, but you can do it. Just remember how much you hate me for giving you those nicknames. For always hiding so many things from you in your opinion. And I'm sure Sasha has told you some bad things about me too that you don't like. And if that's not the case, just imagine you're Sasha and I'm your mortal enemy. You're so incredibly angry with me and hate nothing more in the world than poor dear Glaczio. Let's go, pretty angel. Now that the healer had listed so many things, Cheyenne had become real angry. She added a few angry thoughts on her own to make sure she could actually attack him. Why won't he just tell me what's going on? Why is he, to use Sasha's words, such a complete idiot and exploits girls for his own benefit? Cheyenne now felt ready and ran towards the healer. Fortunately, he did not have his sword but a wooden stick in his hand and waited for the attack. She raised her bow, took a wide swing and struck with it. Without much effort, Glaczio, holding the stick in one hand, blocked the attack and pushed the girl back, but Cheyenne did not give up and tried again. Not a good decision, because her opponent seemed to have been waiting for it. Before she could attack, he stopped her with a sufficiently powerful blow to the stomach, and she had to retreat to regain her balance. However, he had placed his foot behind her legs, so she tripped over it and fell backwards to the ground. With half-closed eyes, the healer looked at Cheyenne with a grin and held the wooden stick to her throat. At that moment, Cheyenne could not have said for certain that he was not an enemy. Sasha had been watching the whole time and was horrified. Glaczio, are you completely stupid? What was that all about? You know she has no idea how to fight and you're already using your nastiest tricks? And get that stick away from her throat, for goodness sake! Can you believe this? The healer sighed and helped the girl to her feet, asking her how she was feeling. Are you all right, sweetheart? You did everything wrong that you possibly could have done. But at least now I know what we need to work on. It's going to be a lot of work, sweetie. I'm sorry about that, but your enemies aren't going to be gentle with you either. At the moment, we're only dealing with knights who just attack stubbornly, but you never know what comes next. Well, let's see. You're small and petite, so we need to work more on your defense, reaction, and speed. If a really strong knight attacks you, you're no match for him unless you can dodge quickly enough. You wouldn't have enough strength to block his attack and resist him. So I'm going to teach you the same methods I use. First of all, you need to be the epitome of calm. You have to concentrate hard so that you can think quickly and wisely about what to do next. Then you must never lose sight of the enemy unless you are 100% sure of his location. You are clever, in my opinion, and once you get used to close combat, you are guaranteed to have the same responsiveness, calmness, and concentration as when you work with your bow. All that remains is speed and defense. A few nasty tricks won't hurt either. Once you've mastered all that, I'll show you how to attack properly and carefully, and we'll spend a little time on elemental magic. You always have to think one step ahead. I know that it's difficult for someone who isn't as highly intelligent as I am, but Sasha here manages it reasonably well. Even if she mostly just attacks stubbornly, just like the knights. But to be honest, I think you'll learn very quickly, because I really think you're quite intelligent, Angel. For example, you have no problem understanding complicated things. That's unusual for someone from the Undercity, but it's all the more sad that your intelligence was never encouraged. Anyway, let's start training. Cheyenne understood what he had to focus on during the fight. It was probably just a matter of practice. He even said he wants to teach me elemental magic. That's great! But will I really be able to attack and hurt someone? Maybe I'll even have to kill someone. I don't know if I'm capable of that. So the training began, and Glaczio taught the girl many important things and the basics of fighting. A few hours later, Cheyenne had internalized most of what she had been taught and was able to apply it excellently in combat. She had already managed to defeat Glaczio once in a training fight. Even though he had obviously let the girl triumph without resistance after a long fight, she counted it as a victory. Sasha was thrilled when the healer admitted defeat, but he had ignored her and continued with his training. Teacher and students seemed to be having a lot of fun. Now it was evening, the chroma stars were fading, and some had already disappeared on the horizon. Glaczio threw the stick aside and drew his sword from its sheath. The cold emanating from the blade was clearly visible as the heavy, icy air sank to the ground as light blue mist and slowly dissipated. The ice sword had several symbols and patterns on its blade, and the elemental orb was visible through the pale blue metal. It was a truly beautiful weapon. Cheyenne found it almost sad that something so wonderful served as an instrument of death. What does he want to do with his sword now? The healer played around with the sharp object for a moment and then pointed its tip at the girl. He looked at her defiantly and revealed his intention. Right, Angel. The last fight for today. Metal against metal. If you don't hurt yourself now, you've mastered today's training. Attack me. Cheyenne was shocked. Was he serious? She was supposed to withstand his ice blade without hurting herself? But she believed she could do it, and even if something happened, he was a healer. The girl slowly stumbled towards Glaczio. When she was already quite close to him, he struck with his sword as fast as lightning, but Cheyenne had also become quick and blocked the blow. His blade struck her bow several times, forcing her to retreat. She managed to push him back briefly, and he praised the girl before launching another attack. After further blocking maneuvers, Cheyenne bumped into a tree and could not retreat any further. The healer pressed the ice sword hard against the metal bow. If she gave way now, the blade would cut her throat. Above her, she saw some branches hanging down from the tree. She pushed Glaczio away with all of her strength, jumped up to grab hold of the branches, and when her attacker came closer again, she kicked him with her feet. He fell backwards, but rolled backwards and was back on his feet, ready for another attack. Cheyenne had hoped for just that. Now she could get away from the tree and had freed herself from her predicament. Then she moved sideways towards the healer and tried to attack him. He used the same trick as in their very first fight and tripped the girl. She fell backwards again, but this time she planned it, landing on her hands and shifting her entire weight onto them. Then she swung her legs up, knocked the ice sword out of Glacio's hand, did a handstand for half a second, and then landed back on the ground with her legs further away from her opponent than before. The healer seemed very surprised and retrieved his sword, which was stuck in the ground a few meters away. Meanwhile, he praised his student. Perfect. You couldn't have done it better. Little angel, you didn't tell me you could do a somersault like that. And backwards too. Impressive. Cheyenne was delighted and thanked him. Thank you for teaching me so much. I think I understand everything now. I've never been able to do a somersault before. I've never even tried, but trying that now seemed to be the only way to avoid falling. The healer had picked up his sword and put it back in its sheath, but he paused and said a few quiet words. You learn very quickly and well, little angel. It's almost as if you have fighting in your blood. I also managed this kind of role quickly and without much thought back then. He slowly turned around and looked the girl straight in the eyes. He seemed very thoughtful once again, but this time in a different way. Sasha and Adocaz had also come closer. The young woman went to the healer and whispered something to him. Don't you think we should tell her now? How much more proof do you want? A normal person could never learn all these fighting techniques so quickly, and you know that. Cheyenne understood every single word her friend said. Glaczio closed his eyes and sighed before answering Sasha. I wanted to be absolutely sure before we caused her unnecessary worry, but on the other hand, you're right. We've been hiding it from her for far too long, and since everything currently points in that direction, we should slowly tell her the truth. The healer opened his eyes and looked at Cheyenne. What's going on? What's truth, and what do I need to know? She became nervous and asked, hoping to finally get all the answers to her questions. What do you mean? Would you kindly tell me what's going on here? What evidence do you mean, and what truth? Please tell me what's going on. Unlike Glaczio, Sasha seemed surprised that Cheyenne had heard the whispering again and took a step back. She looked at the girl sympathetically and left it to the healer to speak. It was one of those rare moments when he was exceptionally serious. I wish I had been mistaken, but everything points to it at the moment. Even when I first saw you, you seemed somehow different to me, little angel. Then you told me your story and showed me the scroll. The knights see you, a 17-year-old girl who has never hurt anyone, as a threat. Strange, isn't it? You possess a black crystal that they want. You have amazing healing abilities and learn incredibly quickly. Your bow is a weapon that shouldn't exist. Considering all this, I'm almost certain that our assumption is correct. Cheyenne le bless. We believe you are the chosen one of darkness.